Hi everyone, welcome back to I See Melanie. Today we'll be talking about season 7 of Love is Blind, episodes 10 and 11. And I must say, out of all the episodes we've gotten, all the chunks we've gotten, this week's was my least favorite for three main reasons. A lot of things happened off screen, and I don't know if this is a regular thing for Love is Blind since I just started watching this season, but when the storyline is based on these things that happened that I didn't see, it's hard for me to paint a proper picture of the discussion that the couple is having about it in the show. Another thing is a lot of things seemed very contrived. I feel as though the producers came in and said, we're going to give you the storyline and run with it, which I didn't really appreciate. And I'll go into those details later on. And also kind of relating to that, I feel as though the producers got to these people and said, zhuzh it up for the camera. Be really performative, be really over the top with things to add drama to the show. So for me, that comes off as very contrived. And I know this is a reality show and this is a Netflix production. So of course it's going to be extremely contrived, but it just really seemed to amp things up to another level this week. Let's talk about Ramses and Marissa. So the last time we saw them, they were talking about birth control and how she did not want to go back on hormonal birth control and he didn't want to wear condoms. So they're back at that. She said that she's sick, that she has a long-term disease or ailment. She has vitamin D deficiency. They don't really go into any particular details, but I'll take that at face value. And he's talking, and then again, the condom thing comes up again. And he's like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But they don't really come to any conclusion on that front. And then at some point, Marissa mentions that a lot of husbands, they either cheat on their wives after they've just given birth or when they're pregnant. And so I guess she's worried that Ramses might be like this too, because she feels as though he's like always on her. And some days she just wants to be left alone or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, I understand. But no real conclusion comes out after that conversation is done. So it's just kind of left there. Later on in the party, Marissa talks to Bowden. And at first it seemed as though they were going to make it seem like, oh, Ramses is so jealous because she's talking to this guy who on paper with the military and stuff, Marissa has a bit more in common with, but it turned out to be nothing. The previews, again, I mentioned, they're always filled with misdirection and nothing really came of that, which is good because that would be really silly. In the next episode, we see them getting the marriage license and they both seem excited to be moving on and making things more official. And then we see them on a boat having a good time, enjoying the sun, talking about the wedding. And Marissa asks Ramses if he's going to invite the Guyanese side of his family to the wedding, which I didn't realize he was Guyanese. My family is Guyanese. So I'm pretty sure my uncles or my dad or somebody in my family knows at least one person in his family, but I haven't asked them and I probably won't. But anyway, he was saying that they aren't very close and so he hasn't kept up with them, so he probably won't. And then Marissa was asking him about other things related to the wedding. So a few episodes back, Marissa said that she doesn't want a cis hetero officiating the thing. She wants it to be spiritual and not religious, I think she said. And she wanted to be Black and themed, right? So she seemed to be more involved or more interested in the wedding prep than Ramses, even though he said he wanted to contribute things. And then she mentioned things like the music and the guest list. I think the music in particular, and how he hasn't really contributed that much and how she wishes that he was more involved in it and that she didn't have to prompt him to get involved in it. And he's like, yeah, I should do more and you shouldn't have to ask me, which I'm sure is true. So when I'm watching this show, my personal biases come in all the time. I like to keep an open mind whenever I'm watching any show, but I always kind of inject my feelings into things. I think that's natural. And for me, I like weddings. I like going to people's weddings. I would never want to plan a wedding. Like, I'm not married. You can see, yeah, I'm not married. But I always said, if I were to get married, I would do it in one of two ways. So the first one would be I would go to City Hall and get married, or I would get the Justice of Peace to come officiate the wedding ceremony at a restaurant, and I'd invite my immediate family and his immediate family. And I told all my friends this. They're like, oh, you're not inviting me to your wedding? I'm like, no, sorry. Like, I hate party planning. I have been involved in many friends and families' wedding preparation, and each and every one of them has took on a life of their own, and a lot of drama came with it. And like, I don't like really planning parties I have at my house because I'm always disappointed by something with it, and I'm not really that ceremonial. So I can kind of see where Ramses might be coming from, but he should contribute. And like, if music is all you have to do, then just do it. It's very simple. And then later on, we see the ladies who are actually still engaged go and get their dresses tried on and fitted or whatever. And so we see Marissa's mom again, and I must say she really dialed things back from the last time, because she was just so abrasive the other times, but now she seems a bit more calm. And I guess she knows Ramses a bit better now, and so she seems to like him for as much as she knows him. And she seemed very supportive of Marissa, which was very nice. And then later on, again, more off-screen stuff happens. I have no idea. So it turns out, it looks as though somebody Ramses knows talked to him and kind of swayed him away from the idea of getting married. I have no idea what it was. And there was a point where Marissa looked like she was understanding about it. And she's like, you can't let other people dictate what you do. But yeah, I don't know what happened. So I don't know how to judge this situation. Hi everyone, I just remembered this while I was editing the video. There was a point on the boat where Marissa said that she wants to get married forever. She doesn't really believe in divorce, and that she is willing to withstand 5 to 7 years of unhappiness in a marriage before she would even consider divorce. And Ramses and me said, what? You want to withstand all that for so long? And she said yes. With all of that and their differences they have, and Ramses's cold feet looking expression at the end, I don't think they're going to get married. I highly, highly doubt it. Okay, let's talk about Tayler and Garrett. So when I talked about a lot of things being contrived in this episode, this is where it is. So we see them at the beginning. They're being their boring, nice selves, doing some workshop with the letters for grandparents, right? Okay, so that's nice. Then later on, when they're en route to the flapper party, we see them on the sidewalk and they're having a tense conversation. And so it turned out an ex of Garrett's texted him. So apparently this is an ex from 7 years ago, texted him. He didn't know what to do, so he just liked the text. And Tayler is very upset, and she said basically, why are you getting texts from this woman? You should tell her you have a fiance now, like I don't want to talk to you, back off essentially. And he says, yeah, he was kind of confused in the moment, so he just liked the text. And she said that liking the text is almost worse than telling her something. And what struck out to me, and I know this has happened several other times, but it was really conspicuous to me about how this was actually shot. So again, they're on the sidewalk, they're outside, they're mic'd up obviously so we can hear what they're saying. But there were about 5 different camera angles used in this exchange. And again, I know that's what happens in reality TV shows, or all TV shows, but it just seemed very fake. I don't know, it just seemed very manufactured. And for one, what is this text message? Was it a meme? Was it, hey, I saw your mom at the grocery store the other day and I was thinking about you? Like, what was it? How did Tayler see it? When did Tayler see it? Did she see it in the car ride or the walk to the place just now? Or was it from earlier in the day? Nothing. So I don't know like how salacious this was or how inappropriate this was, but the way Tayler was going on, and she was talking about how she's been cheated on in the past and she doesn't want that again, obviously, it made me think like, what the hell does this woman say in this text message? Anyway, so when they get to the club or to the bar, and they're talking to Tayler and Ashley, and Garrett mentions, yeah, my ex messaged me and I responded to her saying, I'm engaged now. So this is different from what he said before. And so now Taylor's like, what is going on? This is different from what you said before. And she is very mad. She says she needs a moment alone and she goes off crying. And for one, if Garrett did what Tayler wanted him to have done, and that is tell the lady to go away, essentially. Why didn't he say that before? And now, why is he saying it in front of Tayler and Ashley? And from Taylor's point of view, like, this is what you wanted to hear. Again, I understand why she's confused as to the lie about it. But this to me just felt so contrived. Like, to me, this felt as though they said, you know what, Tayler and Garrett, you guys are solid, but you're not dramatic enough. And you're still here. Please zhuzh things up. This is a scenario we're going to give you, and you guys run with it. Because to me, this made no sense. This felt very high school, and it went nowhere. It was really, really stupid. And then we see her talking to Ashley, I think, or to the confessional or whatever, and she's saying, like, "Oh, we're supposed to meet my parents tomorrow, and how can I go through with this knowing what I know now?" And it's like, are you serious? Like, I did not like that at all. But anyway, the next episode comes, and that's the next day, they say, and they go to San Diego, and everything seems fine, because this is such a stupid story. And we meet her mom, and her mom seems lovely, and she again mentions her reservations because this whole project is crazy. But she said that she talked to Taylor's dad, and she said, you know what, you are a grown woman, and if you feel that so this is the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do. And I'm getting a sense just from watching you guys interact right now that you are very close and that you'll have a good marriage. You guys are good together. So they get her blessing. And then later on at the dress try-on situation, Tayler got emotional. All the issues with Garrett are done because they weren't real issues to begin with. And Tayler looks beautiful. Her dress, I think she had the nicest dress out of all of them. And that's where we leave them off. They're fine because they're Garrett and Tayler. They're a little boring to watch, but I think they are a good couple. And I think that they'll actually go through with getting married. Let's go on to Tim and Alex next. We meet Tim's parents and they both seem very lovely. The mother is more of the talker and she just has a very calm demeanor to her. The way she talks, it's like she could be either a college professor or a therapist. Like a very calming presence. And they're talking about, the relationship and their pods and their vulnerabilities with each other. And the mom mentions that Tim sometimes, when he does get more emotional, it's like he's almost separating from himself. And Alex said, yeah, she's noticed this. And they just talk about, different personality types. That takes some adjusting to getting used to them. But you can tell that she and the husband are very different in their demeanor as well. And even though Tim and Alex might be a little bit different on that front, they could learn to speak the same language in a way, right? And then later on, Tim wants to talk to his parents alone on the balcony. And he's talking about they've had some squabbles already and that he's not an affectionate guy and he's not going to be able to change that. So I mentioned in a previous episode where Tim said he's an immovable object. So when he said that, a couple things struck out to me. For one, the fact that he recognizes that, he's self-aware that he is immovable. I think that's a good thing because it's always good to be self-aware. But the very fact that he says that and he didn't follow up with, I'm working to change on that, that was very telling, right? And so again, when he's talking about he's not affectionate and all these things, and he's not willing to bend, and the mom says, you're going to have to learn how to do that. He doesn't, because it's very hard to change these type of traits in people without time, a catalyst, and a lot of practice in that regard. So anyway, we don't see them until later on when Alex is at the house. She's about to eat dinner. And I think Tim either comes through the door or he knocks. I can't remember. They have a conversation. And then I thought it was weird when Alex is like, should I sit at the couch with you or can we have this conversation with me sitting at the dining table, which I thought was kind of weird. But anyway, in essence, Tim says that he wasn't impressed with the way she presented in front of his parents, and that how they drove 10 hours to get there and how she took a nap while they were there and how he didn't like that. And Alex explains that she was talking to them for 4 hours and she got tired. She took a cat nap for an hour. and then she went back to things. And yeah, he didn't like that. And for me, okay, they have been together for a while. They have been sleeping in the same room for a while. The idea that she gets tired sometimes shouldn't be new to Tim. I would think that he would have seen evidence of this before. And if she needs to take cat naps, perhaps she should get herself checked out. But we know that, or he should know that this is a thing that she does. And so, yeah, he didn't like that. I thought it was disrespectful. And he's compared it to when her parents came around, that he had to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, learn how to use his grill properly, cook the food, clean up the food and all that stuff, even though he said he would expect her to at least contribute a bit and clean up, or he implied that. And for one, I say, okay, you woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning to go to the grocery store. Big friggin' deal. Like, that is not a big deal. 8 o'clock is not early. And yeah, each grill is different. Like, learn how to cook on the grill. Like, that's not a big deal. Yes, it was nice that he did that for her parents, but like, don't act as though you did some big production for me that is something that you should be lauded for, okay? So when they're talking about the stuff that happened that day or the day before about her car and how she didn't really talk to him that much in the daytime because she was working, and then she came back, she napped for an hour until 6 p.m. She responded later, and earlier on the day when he asked about checking the tires, and then she said, yeah, they're good. And then he said to check something else or whatever, and she didn't respond to it because it's like one of those messages where it's like, yeah, like it's, like, okay, like all you're going to say is okay, right? And then, so he was mad about that. And then he said something about how I don't think I should have to respond on your timeline. Like, you can't dictate when I respond to you or how I respond to you or something like that. And then she says, like, first of all, this is not a big deal. Again, I got back to you late because I was sleeping, but I did get back to you. I was busy at work during the day, like working with clients. And also, like, this is not a big deal. And if you feel you need to communicate in XYZ way, you need to express that to me. And for me, she said something like, oh, if you want me to behave like this or want me to respond like this, you have to tell me. And I thought to myself, girl, you don't need to mold into anything that he says you need to, because I don't feel as though her communication was that off. And, or I don't think Tim should have responded in such a way to something so minuscule. Like, you feel slighted that she didn't get back to you during the workday about her car. Like, seriously, what is your problem? My takeaway from this is Tim is not the right person for this show. Tim is not even the right person to go on a blind date, because I feel as though he has very, very strict rules on communication and decorum, or whatever you want to call it. And they have different personality types. It's not going to be exactly the same. And then later on, he says to her, they're not a good match, and I've decided that we're not going to get married. And like, you can feel free to say what you want to say. And she said, well, do you want to hear me say it just to hear it? Or are you going to listen to it and, possibly change your mind? I'm like, girl, don't beg him for anything. Don't ask him for anything. Then he says, oh, I want to understand. So he wants to understand so we can take this away, process it, and maybe be better for the next woman he dates. I doubt it. Anyway, and then he says, like, I decide I never want to see you again. And this again is where I felt it was contrived. He acted as though she told him F you to his face or told his parents off or something. He acted as though she did something completely wild and out there. And then he left. Like, he looked like such a villain to me. And I do think he does have his issues that he needs to work on, and he needs to be more flexible, more tolerable, more reasonable. But the fact that he went on to her like that was totally uncalled for. So they didn't get married, which I think is a good thing, especially for Alex, because she didn't deserve all that. And Tim is garbage. And then I'm glad that he didn't cause a scene at the bar when they both showed up. But yeah, I felt bad for Alex. I feel good for her in the sense that she's not going to commit herself to somebody so inflexible. But he didn't need to treat her like that. So again, they're not going to the altar. Now let's go on to Tayler and Ashley. So last week we ended off in the cliffhanger, and we learned that Tayler has 3 biological kids. And so I suggested last week that these kids, who he says he was just a sperm donor of, they could be for a lesbian couple who needed sperm to have a baby. And that's what Tayler says it is. So he says this. I am a person, I am on social media, so I have obviously heard and seen things to the contrary, but I'm going to keep things in universe as it is and just stick to what's being presented in the TV show. Ashley asks if these kids know what he looks like. And he says, I don't think so. That is not an answer. It's either yes or no, or possibly. So these kids, I think he said they were like, the oldest one is 7 and the youngest one is 5 or 4. So these are kids, they're not, toddlers, they're not, 5 months old who you can't say if they remember anything, right? The fact that he says, I don't know, if I were Ashley, I would say, okay, that means a yes. Because how do you not know if they know what you look like? Because they would know what you look like if they've seen you, if they've been in your presence in the same room, if they've got your picture, if you know that these ladies say, oh, your biological dad, here's what he looks like, here's a picture of him, right? So the fact that he says that and she doesn't really follow up with any questions, like, girls, seriously? And also, I would have liked for them to explain how this topic even came up to begin with. Were they talking about kids? Well, I'm pretty sure this is not the situation based on everything we've seen, that he didn't mention, oh, actually I have, 3 kids. I feel as though this happened by complete happenstance, whether somebody texted him and mentions, oh, the kids say this or the kids need this, or somehow, I don't know how, somehow Ashley got wind of the fact that he might have children. I don't think he was being forthcoming with it. So I was a little disappointed in Ashley, but I can't say I'm really surprised that she just took it in and basically shoved it under the rug. Because I have said this whole time that she seems the most traditional to me, and I think she just really, really wants to get married. And I wish more for her, because she should want to get married to somebody who's at the very least honest and forthcoming. But anyway, and I thought it was rich when the whole Tayler and Garrett situation was happening and they're sitting at the table and Garrett's like, guys, so this happened with my ex-girlfriend in the text. And they're like, oh, well, we had a situation too and we're getting over it. It's like, why are you being so flippant with, anyway, that's okay, that's done. But anyway, so the next episode comes along and they're talking and it's like all that baby stuff didn't happen. Well, for the most part, they go on a skydive, which is what they mentioned they wanted to do in their pod dates. And so Ashley says, like, this feels as though it's like a leap of faith. And so if we can get through this together, we can get through anything. It's a metaphorical symbolism of our relationship. I'm like, girl, you need to stop with that. But later on, the kids do come up because he mentions donating when they're talking about them having children, which I don't know why he would bring that word up unless he was directed to say that, which I think is the case. But anyway, she was saying, yeah, she didn't expect to be in this type of a situation, but who knows, in a few years, the kids might be in our lives. So when she said that to me, this really threw me. So why would these kids be in your life? If he is not the legal custodian or guardian of these kids, and they've got 2 parents and other family members and friends, and these are just people who are removed from him, why would these kids be in your life in the capacity of children? So again, I feel as though a lot of conversations happened off screen that didn't make it to the final cut of the episodes that we saw. I thought that was so weird. Again, I continue on with them being saccharine. I don't really feel as though their relationship is very real. I think they have affection for each other, but I don't think their foundation is all that great. So again, for a lot of this season, I was saying that they're like the perfect match, as perfect as any match can be on a show where you meet your fiance and you get married within 6 weeks, those are the boundaries. But yeah, I don't know. I really couldn't say one way or the other if I think they're actually going to make it to the altar. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Last but not least, let's go on to Hannah and Nick. So last week when I was talking about Nick, I said, I look at him as a goofy little brother, a silly guy. And somebody in the comments mentioned that I have internalized misogyny because I see him as a goofy brother type, and I see Hannah as a monster. And I said, show me exactly where I called her a monster, because I've never called her a monster. And they must have missed the part where I said, he seems like a kid, and that begs the question, should he be getting married? And he's not getting married, obviously. So anyway, that annoyed me a little bit. We see them getting ready for the party, and we know that Katie, one of his other picks, was going to be there. Nick mentions that seeing Katie again would give him a degree of closure. And Hannah says, what closure? I don't need closure from my exes from the pod. And I thought, like, do you actually need closure for that, Nick? Or are you just saying that? Again, I do think he's just saying that because I felt as though all this stuff was really contrived. So when we go there, we learn that Katie and Hannah are best friends. Since when? I don't recall them. I could be wrong. I could have forgotten that part, but I don't recall them saying they're best friends. They're also about 10 years apart in age, which I know you can be friends with people younger than you, but I just didn't think that they were that close. So anyway, so Katie's talking to him, and before them, she's like, oh no, Nick is really hot. She said that about 5 times, I think Hannah said. And they're talking, and they're having, small talk about her football career, because I think she's a football journalist, or a sports journalist. And so she was saying, like, yeah, I liked you. You seemed very nice, but you seemed immature. And she said things that I said in the first episode, in that Nick kind of was leading with like this fake degree of confidence, and how he should just talk normal, like stop with all the flattery, stop with the objectification, and just bring your natural self out because you have a lot to offer. Right? So they had a nice conversation. It was like more like an older sister talking to a younger brother, quite frankly. It wasn't anything ridiculous. And then Hannah's acting all jealous and stuff. Later on, we see her talking to somebody, I think it was Ashley, about her difficulties with Nick. And she said, when you start contributing like an equal, that's when I'll treat you like an equal. And I heard that, like, that is wrong on so many levels. For one, he is not your child. He is not your pet. He is not lower than you. You guys are both fiancés. You're supposed to be getting married. So you shouldn't talk to him like that. But if you feel you need to talk to him like that, you should be asking yourself, why should I, as a grown woman, have to pull up this man? Why should it be my responsibility to make him equal to me? It shouldn't be. If that's how you feel about your fiance, you shouldn't be engaged. I don't think so. And then she was saying other things in that kind of a vein about how she could teach him so much and she can make him more worldly or something like that. And again, it's almost as though she kind of wanted a project in a way, or was cool with having a project. Like, that's not her job. That's not for her to impose on him. And it's also not good enough for her. So why would she want to do that? And also she was mentioning things about them not being compatible sexually. Like, there's certain things that he felt grossed out doing and he didn't want to do it. And that's why, again, the concept of this entire show is kind of crazy, because you're thrown with people who you don't have enough time to really learn. And if he's not going to do this for you for the rest of your life, then that is an issue. And that's not something that you can either expect to change, or it might not change on your timeline or whatever. But if this is something that's very fundamental to like your sex life and he doesn't want to do it, then you guys shouldn't be together. I don't think so. That coupled with all your other differences, like, it's a mess. And then when they get back from the party, they're fighting about him spending so much time with Katie. And she's going on, oh, she's my best friend. And then she's kind of like all over the place, because he's like, I should probably be more mad at Katie for flirting with you than you. And it's like, okay, fine. And then she's not your best friend. You don't know her. And then she said, I have turned you from a boy to a man. Which again, this is where I feel the contrivance. Like, I feel as though the producer said, say this line, because it was so stupid on the face of it. For one, she obviously has not changed him from a boy to a man, because he's still acting the way that he is. And also, why would you want to have to do that? And why do you think you can do that? Why do you think you should do that or should have to do that? And she was going on about how she felt so disrespected that he was talking to Katie the same way she felt disrespected with that swan lady at the beach the other day. It's like, are you serious? Later on, Hannah and Nick go to a cafe or something, and we meet either 2 or 3 of her friends. And they're basically ganging up on Nick, interrogating him. And they talk about, the household things and like all these squabbles that they have. And again, like I said before, Hannah, a person who was on her own since she was 18. Again, I think that's super young to be on her own. But anyway, she was. She's going to be more responsible and more apt to do, the logistics of just being an adult who lives in their house. She'll be more apt to do that than Nick will be. As I mentioned in that video where they were talking about him boiling noodles and him not knowing how to do that, I felt as though that was fake. I honestly do not believe he doesn't know how to boil noodles, but even if he doesn't, you are not going to change that fact that he's not really good at doing the household type of things. And so she says that her friends didn't like him, and I can completely understand why. They know her. They know what she's like. At some point, Hannah has a conversation with her mom, and she's expressing her hesitations. And her mom, I mentioned in the last video, was very laid back. She is probably the least opinionated out of all the family members that we see here. She doesn't really leave her with any parting advice. Hannah and Nick later on have a conversation about all their disagreements and squabbles and stuff like that. And they talk about the list that she made about his shortcomings. So him not being socially aware, him not being respectful enough, not being mature or confident enough. And in essence, Hannah says she doesn't understand why he doesn't possess those things or seem to want to achieve those things. So to me, this is Hannah's brand of immaturity. Nick is immature in the more traditional sense, as in he doesn't have to pay for his bills and stuff like that. Hannah is more subtly immature. Again, she is 26 years old. And I know I sound like a grandma when I say this, but she's young. She's very young. She's a lot younger than me. And the fact that she doesn't understand that those types of things are very deep-seated personality traits in a person, I think shows her age and her immaturity. Because you can't just make somebody mature in 5 weeks. You can't make someone confident in 5 weeks. You can't make someone respectful in 5 weeks. You can't change those types of things easily. You can change the personality traits with the right attitude. And I think he does have the attitude to want to change, but it's not going to be quick. And it's not going to be on Hannah's timeline. They're talking about something, I forget what it is. And she's like, you remember that time when this happens? Like, I know you probably don't because you don't remember things. And then Nick says, well, you're throwing shade for no reason. And my problem with Hannah is not her personality per se, it's her attitude, because I think she comes across as very rude. I think she's very direct. I don't think she's dealing with people at the appropriate level that she should be dealing with them. And she has her own beliefs, she has her own history, and she has her way of doing things. And she thinks everyone is going to be exactly like her. And that's just not how things work. And you can't change somebody like Nick in a couple of weeks. And you shouldn't have to change somebody like Nick in a couple of weeks. Hannah and Nick should have broken up a long time ago, in my opinion. So I'm glad that they stopped this whole process. I think this is a big lesson for Nick. I do not think Nick is ready to get married. I think he's too immature. And he's a nice guy. I think he has potential. But I don't think he's ready for marriage right now. Hannah, I think she is. I still think she is immature. I'm a lot older than her, so I can see the youthfulness in her still and the naivete. But I do think she is more mature, and yeah, I think she'd be better suited with somebody else. She would probably, on the surface, be better with Tim. I think that they have more of a structure to each other that would lend well to each other. So who even knows? I have no idea. So there's that. Honorable mention, at the party, we see Tim and Alex are both there, and I'm glad that nothing went down. No drama happened between them. And then we saw Monica. I'm like, oh, hey, girl, what you doing? And then she's talking about Steven. She's like, oh, I talked to Steven for 2 hours the other day. And I was like, oh, please tell me you guys aren't together again. And so she mentions, yeah, they just talked. They got things out of the way, but there's no intention for them getting back together, which I was very happy about. So that is the wrap on these 2 episodes. Again, I felt as though a lot of things in this were very fake. I didn't buy a lot of these episodes. And next week is the finale, which I hope will be fireworks, very entertaining. And then we've got the reunion live in 2 weeks, I guess. So yeah, so anyway, I would like to know what you all thought of these episodes. Do you find them to be very contrived like I did? I would love to know what you think, so please start a discussion in the comments area. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other videos I put out, and I'll see you guys later on I See Melanie. Bye.